The sun had just begun to dip beneath the wide-open plains, painting the horizon in gold and rose, when the giant cowboy known as Cole Mercer swung down from his horse, dust trailing from his boots like the ghost of every mile he'd ever ridden. He had the kind of presence that made the earth seem to pause for him, a man carved by loss, solitude, and the weight of too many yesterdays. His broad shoulders bore not just strength but the quiet burden of regret. The ranch behind him stretched endlessly, a lonely sprawl of weathered fences and empty barns. It was said that no one had ever seen Cole smile since the fire that took everything he loved, his wife, his unborn child, and the only softness he'd ever known. To most in town, he was a myth, a shadow that appeared when work had to be done and vanished when hearts started to get too close. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. That afternoon, when he rode into town for supplies, the last thing he expected was to find a small bundle of stubborn sunshine standing in front of the general store, clutching a ragged teddy bear and a note pinned to her faded dress. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old, her cheeks smudged with dirt, her big blue eyes shining with tears she refused to let fall. People passed her by with pity in their eyes but distance in their steps. Nobody wanted to deal with someone else's tragedy. Cole didn't stop at first. He never did. His world didn't have room for strangers, much less for little girls with sad eyes and broken stories. But when he reached for the reins to leave, a tiny voice called out behind him, soft but certain, "Mister, wait, please." Cole froze. The sound hit him like a memory. His jaw clenched, his heart ached in a way he thought he'd buried long ago. Slowly, he turned his head. The little girl stood there, her small boots dusty, her dress fluttering in the wind. She looked at him as if she already knew he wasn't someone to fear. "What is it?" he asked, his deep voice rough from disuse. She looked down at her teddy bear, then up at him again. "You need a wife, and I need a dad," she said, every word trembling but true. The entire street went silent. The few townsfolk nearby stopped in their tracks, glancing between the tiny girl and the giant cowboy who suddenly seemed too big for the moment. Cole blinked, unable to process the words that struck straight through his guarded soul. "What did you just say?" he asked, his tone softer now. The girl took a step forward, clutching the bear tighter. "Mama said, I should find someone strong and kind. Someone who won't leave me. And, you look like him." Her eyes shone as she whispered, "You look like the kind who stays." For a moment, Cole's throat closed. He could hear the faint echo of the wind rustling through the dry grass, smell the familiar scent of dust and hay. The note on her dress caught his attention, fluttering in the breeze. He knelt down, his huge frame shrinking until he was eye level with her. His hands trembled slightly as he unpinned it and read. The handwriting was hurried but heartfelt. "Please take care of her. Her name is Lily. I can't give her the life she deserves. I'm sorry." He looked up again, his dark eyes searching the girl's face for answers. "Where's your mama now?" he asked. The little girl's bottom lip quivered. "She's gone. She said she'd come back, but she didn't." The pain in her voice cracked something inside him, something that had been sealed away since the night his own world burned down. Without saying another word, he extended his hand. "Come on," he said quietly. "Let's find you something to eat." And just like that, the legend of the silent cowboy began to shift. They rode back to the Mercer Ranch under a sky painted in fire and gold. Lily sat in front of him on the saddle, small hands gripping his arm as she leaned back against his chest without fear. Cole hadn't felt that kind of warmth in years. Every bump of the trail reminded him he wasn't alone anymore. When they reached the ranch, she looked around in awe. "It's so big," she whispered. "Do you live here all by yourself?" Cole nodded. "Used to," he said simply. She turned in the saddle to face him, squinting up at his sunburned face. "Not anymore," she declared. "I'm here now." That night, as the stars scattered across the sky, Cole sat on the porch, watching the girl fall asleep on the old couch inside. He'd given her a blanket that once belonged to his wife, something he hadn't touched in years. Her tiny form curled beneath it as if she'd always belonged there. For the first time in forever, the house didn't feel empty, it felt alive. But the questions haunted him. Who had left her? Why him? And what was he supposed to do now with a child who believed he was her hero? Over the next few days, Lily filled every silent corner of the ranch with laughter. She followed him everywhere, feeding the horses, chasing the chickens, asking endless questions about his hat, his boots, his scars. She talked about her mama sometimes, always in past tense, though she didn't seem to fully understand what gone meant. And each time she called him Mr. Cole, something in his heart softened. The townsfolk noticed the change, too. The giant cowboy who never spoke now came to town with a little girl perched on his arm. When she smiled, people couldn't help but smile back. They whispered about him, how maybe he'd finally found something worth living for. But not everyone approved. One afternoon, as Cole picked up supplies, the sheriff cornered him. "You can't just take in a child like that, Mercer," he warned. "You don't know where she came from. You don't know what trouble she might bring." Cole's jaw tightened. "I know what happens to a kid left alone," he said quietly. "And I'm not letting that happen again." The sheriff sighed. "You're a good man, Cole. But the law's the law. If no one claims her, she'll have to go to the orphanage in Abilene." Cole's heart dropped. He knew what that meant, a cold place with strangers, a world of rules and no love. When he got home that night, he found Lily sitting by the fence, humming to the horses. The setting sun lit her hair like a halo. She turned to him, her smile pure and trusting. "You came back," she said. "Always," he murmured. That night, he couldn't sleep. He sat by the fire, staring at the flickering flames, hearing the echo of the sheriff's words. "If no one claims her." He clenched his fists. Somewhere deep down, a voice whispered, "She already did." The next morning, a storm rolled in. Rain pounded the roof as Cole rode into town, his coat soaked, determination etched across his face. He went straight to the courthouse. The clerk looked up in surprise when the big cowboy strode in, hat dripping water. "What can I do for you, Mr. Mercer?" "I want to adopt a little girl," he said simply. By the time he returned home, Lily was waiting on the porch, wrapped in his old jacket, her eyes lighting up when she saw him. "You look mad," she said softly. "You mad at me?" Cole shook his head. "No, sweetheart," he said, kneeling before her. "I just had to make sure no one ever takes you away." She blinked in confusion. "What do you mean?" He smiled for the first time in years, small and real. "It means you're home now. For good." The rain softened to a drizzle as Lily threw her arms around his neck. "Does that make you my dad?" she asked. He hugged her tight, his voice rough with emotion. "Yeah, kiddo. Guess it does." And as he held her there, beneath the storm-washed sky, the ghost of his past finally began to fade. The ranch that once echoed with silence now had laughter again. The giant cowboy who had lost everything found the one thing he never knew he needed, a reason to live. But as fate would have it, the past has a way of returning when least expected. Because 2 weeks later, a dusty carriage rolled into town carrying a woman who looked like she'd walked through fire and heartbreak. And the first words out of her mouth were, "I'm looking for my daughter. Her name is Lily." The woman who stepped down from the carriage looked like a ghost made flesh, thin, pale, her eyes carrying the ache of someone who had walked too far for too long. The rain had dried on her dress, leaving stains of dust and exhaustion. Cole watched from the porch as she approached the ranch gate, his heart tightening. Inside the house, little Lily was humming to herself, brushing her doll's hair. He felt the ground tilt beneath him, something old and fragile was about to break. The woman lifted her head and met his gaze. "Are you Cole Mercer?" she asked, her voice raw. He nodded slowly. "I am." She swallowed hard. "I think you have my daughter." He led her inside, each step heavier than the one before. When Lily saw the stranger, she froze. The woman fell to her knees. "Baby," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Mama's here." For a heartbeat, everything stilled. The child's eyes filled, confusion mixing with recognition. Then she ran into her mother's arms. Cole turned away, jaw clenched, the warmth that had grown in his chest twisting into pain. He had prayed for this girl to be safe, and now that she was, it meant she might leave. Hours passed before the woman spoke her full truth. Her name was Anna. Her husband had died during a robbery, leaving her alone and penniless. She had been forced to flee, hunted by the same men who had taken everything from her. When she left Lily in town with that note, she had planned to return within days, but sickness and hardship had trapped her miles away. She'd spent months searching for her child, living on hope and regret. "I never meant to leave her," she said, voice shaking. "But when I came back, she was gone. Everyone said the silent cowboy took her." Cole didn't defend himself. He just said, she was alone. I couldn't let her be. Anna looked at him then, not as a threat, but as the man who had kept her daughter alive. You fed her? She asked softly. Every day, he said. She smiles because of you, she whispered. No, Cole replied quietly, because of her. For the next few days, the ranch held a strange stillness. Lily stayed close to her mother, yet her eyes often drifted toward the corral, where Cole worked from dawn till dusk, pretending the ache in his chest was just the wind. One morning, as he saddled his horse, Lily ran out barefoot, tears on her cheeks. Mama says we're leaving, she cried. Are you coming with us? Cole froze, the question slicing through him. Sweetheart, he said gently, crouching down, your mama needs you. You'll be safe now. Her little hands gripped his vest. But you need me too, she said. You said you'd never let me go. His throat tightened. And I won't, not here, he said, touching her heart. You just gotta take me with you in there. When they left the next day, the sky was pale and still. Cole stood on the porch, hat in hand, watching the carriage roll down the dusty road until it disappeared behind the hills. The ranch felt emptier than ever. For weeks afterward, he worked the land like a man chasing silence. But one evening, as the sun bled across the fields, he heard hooves. Turning, he saw the same carriage, smaller now against the horizon. It stopped at the gate. Anna stepped out first, then Lily, who sprinted toward him like sunlight reborn. Told you we'd come back, she shouted. Anna smiled as she reached the porch. We tried the city, she said. It wasn't home. She cried every night. Then I realized, neither of us had truly left you. Cole looked between them, speechless. You sure about this? He asked. Anna nodded. You kept her alive. You kept me alive too, though you didn't know it. If you'll have us, she didn't finish the sentence. Cole's eyes softened. He extended his hand, rough and trembling. Then this is home for good. She placed her hand in his, and for the first time since his own loss, he felt the future instead of the past. Lily cheered, running into the house shouting, we're a family now. That night, laughter filled the old wooden walls again. The fire burned bright, and the stars above seemed to shine just a little closer to earth. Cole looked at Anna, then at the little girl curled between them, and whispered, guess the good Lord knew what he was doing after all. Outside, the wind carried the scent of rain and wildflowers, whispering through the endless fields, a promise that some stories, no matter how broken they begin, can still find their way home. If you felt this story touch your heart, don't forget to subscribe. There are more tales waiting, where love heals even the hardest hearts. Spring came early that year. The Mercer Ranch, once dry and gray, bloomed with wildflowers and laughter. Lily had grown taller, chasing butterflies across the pasture, her giggles ringing over the fields like music. Cole watched her from the porch while Anna tended the garden she'd planted beside the house, bright rows of daisies, sunflowers, and hope. The air smelled of new beginnings. Every morning, Cole woke before dawn, and when he returned from the stables, coffee steamed on the table and Anna's soft smile waited for him. The man who once spoke in silence now hummed tunes Lily taught him. He still carried the scars of the fire, but they no longer burned, they reminded him how far he'd come. One evening, the three of them rode out to the ridge where Cole's old house had stood. Lily sat in front of him on the saddle, pointing at the clouds. That one looks like a heart, she said. Anna laughed. It does if you look close enough. They stopped beneath the oak tree that had survived every storm. Cole dismounted, helping Anna down. This is where it ended, he said quietly, and where it started again. Anna took his hand. No, Cole, this is where we chose to live. They stood there as the sunset poured gold across the horizon, their shadows joining as one. Lily pressed her small hands together and whispered, thank you, God, for my cowboy and my mama. Back at the house, Cole built a swing on the porch for Lily, carved her name into the beam, and hung an old lantern beside it so she'd never be afraid of the dark. The ranch became a home not just of land but of love. Neighbors came by with smiles instead of whispers, and even the sheriff stopped for coffee sometimes, joking that the silent cowboy finally learned to talk. In town, people told the story of the little girl who said, you need a wife, and I need a dad, and how those words saved 3 broken souls. As the stars climbed high that night, Cole sat beside Anna, Lily asleep in her arms. The wind brushed against them softly, as if the earth itself breathed easier. Cole looked at the woman beside him and said, "Never thought I'd get a second chance." Anna smiled through tears. "You didn't get it, Cole, you made it." The camera of life would fade there. A cowboy, a mother, and a child under the wide Texas sky. Proof that love doesn't always arrive loud. It sometimes rides in quietly, wearing dust and a tired smile. If this story warmed your heart, hit subscribe. There are more tales where lost souls find their way home.